You're watching TAG TV.
Hello viewers, welcome to Newsweek South Asia, a program that talks about breeding of terrorism and its impact on South Asian nations. Let's begin with the headlines first. United States expresses concern over Pakistan-sponsored terrorism in 2+2 dialogue with India. Parents awaiting outcome of Commission report as Pakistan observes 5th anniversary of APS attack. Indian MHA releases report over Pakistan-sponsored unrest in Kashmir. And multiple blasts rock Afghanistan, over 30 civilians killed. Pakistan's complicity and double standards vis-a-vis terrorism came to the fore during the second 2+2 ministerial dialogue between India and the US, when American Secretary of State Mike Pompeo categorically said that his country is determined to fight the global menace irrespective of its origin. The two sides extensively discussed the issue of security and assured each other of cooperation in fighting the threat of terrorism, a report. This week, the United States and India engaged into second ministerial level 2+2 dialogue, wherein they discussed the security threats in South Asia and the West in detail. US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, along with Defense Secretary Mark Esper, hosted their Indian counterparts, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh for the highest level dialogue in Washington. In a joint press conference after the meeting, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo assured that Washington will take into account the terror threats to India from Pakistan and appreciated India's views on security threats in its region and around it.
We value India's perspective on security in the Indo-Pacific and, frankly, all around the world.
The four leaders discussed issues ranging from trade to security. Rajnath Singh, India's defense minister, hit out at Pakistan in the press conference by condemning the extreme rhetoric and belligerent statements being spread out about India by Pakistan. While terming it as rightful concern, the two American leaders seconded India's worries about terrorism emanating from its hostile neighbor in the West.
During the meeting, we shared our assessments of the situation in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, and the Indian Ocean region in general. We conveyed that the extreme rhetoric and belligerent statements and incitements to anti-India violence by Pakistani leaders is not conducive to peace.
Reflecting on US and India's common views on the origin and source of terrorism, Indian External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar spoke about threats caused by cross-border terrorism and acknowledged Mike Pompeo's sentiments over recently observed anniversary of 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks. He also mentioned that India and America are working closely at Financial Action Task Force to facilitate the terror funding watchdog in identifying and putting curbs on nations indulged in terror funding.
Our counter-terrorism effort was also discussed at today's meeting, and these have been boosted by a growing consensus on the nature of terror threats in the region and the dangers of cross-border terrorism and sanctuaries. I appreciate very much the sentiments expressed by Secretary Pompeo on the 11th anniversary of the 26/11 Mumbai attack. We discussed ways to address these challenges, including by working closely together at the FATF. We also took note of exchanges between our judicial academies for appreciation of challenges and evolving practices in adjudicating counter-terrorism cases and agreed to further facilitate such exchanges in the areas of criminal jurisprudence.
India and the United States, two of the largest democracies across the world, have seen the worst side of violence when it comes to facing the wrath of radical Islamic terrorism. Post 9/11 and 26/11 terror attacks, the two sides have been broadly involved in discussing strategies to put pressure on Pakistan for launching effective counter-terrorism measures. Pakistan marked the 5th anniversary of deadly Peshawar school terrorist attack this week. 5 years have passed since the brutal attack, but Pakistan has still not claimed its freedom from the mire of terrorism, which is sticking with the country like a termite. Relatives and parents of the deceased are still awaiting a closure report in the case that is expected to reveal the role of Pakistan Army in the attack. While there is hardly any sight of the commission report, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, on the other side, continues to launch attacks in the region. A report.
Pakistan this week observed the 5th anniversary of the Army Public School carnage on December 16, 2014. Post 5 years of the gruesome attack, grief-stricken parents of innocent children are still looking for the outcome of the commission report to answer their questions. Still awaiting the commission report, the parents of the deceased students reiterated their demand of bringing the real planners and perpetrators of the attack to justice in an event organized on the occasion of 5th anniversary of the attack.
ना हमें मकान चाहिए, ना हमें प्लाट चाहिए, ना हमें पैसे चाहिए, हमें कुछ ना हमें इंसाफ चाहिए। हमारे आईजीपी असद दुरानी साहब हो सकता है इधर मौजूद हो ना हो, उन्होंने बबांगे दाखिल एक्सेप्ट किया है पुलिस रिफॉर्म्स और पुलिस दरबार से खिताब करते हुए कि आर्मी पब्लिक स्कूल का वाकया हमारी नाअहली का सबूत है। ये हमारी नाअहली की वजह से हुआ है, रिकॉर्ड पर मौजूद है। 14 नवंबर 2015 का आप डॉन न्यूज पढ़ लें, आज इखबार पढ़ लें, मशरिक पढ़ लें, उसमें वो कैटेगोरिकली एडमिट कर रहा है कि ये हमारी गलती की वजह से हुआ है। आपने उनको अब तक सस्पेंड क्यों नहीं किया? उनको फांसी पर क्यों नहीं लटकाया? 28 अगस्त 2014 को आपको इंफॉर्मेशन मिली है इंटेलिजेंस एजेंसीज की विभाग से सूबे को कि इस आर्मी पब्लिक स्कूल पर हमला होने वाला है। इस स्पेसिफिक वन पर 17, 18, 20 बंदे इस वक्त ड्यूटी पर होते थे। हम बड़ी बड़ी फीसें देते थे, इनमें अपने बच्चों को पढ़ाते थे कि यहाँ पे सेफ और सिक्योर होंगे। उस दिन को चेक किया जाए कि उस दिन वहाँ पर कितने बंदों की ड्यूटी लगी हुई थी। 2 बंदों की, 1 हवलदार और 1 सिपाही की। क्यों? सब रिकॉर्ड पर मौजूद है। बच्चों से पूछ लें कि जनाब उस दिन सिक्योरिटी की क्या पोजीशन थी, गेट खुले हुए थे।
Five years after 6 terrorists of the banned Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan targeted the school, killing 134 students and 16 faculty and staff, no perceptible change has been observed in Pakistan's security system for its civilians. The Pakistani residents still live under the fear of getting attacked by terrorists at any place, any time.
रोज धमाके हो रहे हैं। आखिर हम लोग सेफ तो नहीं है ना? बाहर घर से निकलते हैं ये सोचते खुदा न खास यहाँ पर धमाका हो जाए, यहाँ पर धमाका हो जाए। अभी मैं पता नहीं मैं घर साबित जाऊंगा नहीं जाऊंगा, मुर्दा जाऊंगा।
Fed up of the failed governance, the citizens of Pakistan are demanding credible action by the government of Pakistan to eliminate terrorism from the country. They are pleading the government to bring peace and tranquility in the country, something which they have been longing since decades. Other than a nominal crackdown against the Tehreek-e-Taliban and a few targeted operations against sectarian groups in Punjab, the Pakistani government has failed to limit the reach of the Haqqani network, the Afghan Taliban and Jamaat-ud-Dawa.
मैं उनसे रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं, पुरजोर अपील करता हूं कि खुदा के लिए इस मुल्क से ये लानत ख़त्म कीजिए और हमें पीस दीजिए, अमन दीजिए, हमें अमन दीजिए। हमें कुछ नहीं चाहिए, हमें सिर्फ अमन चाहिए।
Despite the counter-terrorism national action plan chalked out days after the APS massacre, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa still remains a relatively easy target for terrorists. Post-2014, there have been around 341 incidents of killings in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, including a total of 26 suicide attacks till December 15, 2019. In a most recent attack, 11 persons, including a policeman, were injured in a blast outside the Peshawar High Court in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa on December 16. The bomb that exploded outside the court had been planted in rickshaw. The recurring terror attacks in KPK and other regions of Pakistan have frustrated the civilians who hold the government responsible for failed security system in the country.
ये दहशतगर्द ये सुन ले कि हमें कितना खत्म करेंगे, हम खत्म होने वाले नहीं हैं। ऐसे हमारे जैसे और पैदा होंगे और पैदा होंगे और पैदा होंगे। तुम थोड़े से हो, हम बहुत ज्यादा है, लेकिन अफसोस ये है कि हमारे हुक्मरान एक साथ नहीं है। अगर जिस दिन ये एक साथ होकर इस मुल्क के लिए सोचने लग गए, ये सिर्फ अपने लिए सोचते, हमारे लिए नहीं सोचते।
Legal reforms and military operations can only curb terrorism and extremism if the government shows real commitment to its enforcement. But in Pakistan's case, the government seems to have learnt no lesson from the horrifying Peshawar Army public school attack. The terrorists still continue to consider Pakistan as their safe haven and enjoy minimum restraint in their malicious operations in the country.
Since decades, Pakistan-based terrorists are wreaking havoc in Kashmir. Be it countless infiltration bids or terror attacks in Kashmir, Pakistan has been persistent on its efforts of disrupting peace and order in the valley. The trend, which started during the partition of India and Pakistan, continues till date, reports of which have been released time to time by the Indian government. In its latest report, the Indian government reaffirmed the disturbing fact that Kashmiris continue to suffer from cross-border terrorism sponsored by Pakistan, as the terrorists are constantly targeting Kashmiris and non-Kashmiris living in the region. A report. India has been a victim of terrorism, sheltered and supported by Pakistan for over decades, claiming thousands of innocent lives. Recently, Indian Union Minister of State for Home Affairs G. Kishan Reddy informed that Jammu and Kashmir is most affected by terrorism sponsored and supported from across the border. According to MHA's sessional report, there has been a significant rise in the number of infiltration attempts by Pakistan-backed terrorists. The report states that during the 88-day period from August 5th till October 31st, there have been 84 such attempts as against 53 such attempts from May 9th till August 4th, 2019.
As we have seen since August 5, there have been lots of ceasefire violations. And as I already told you, that the ceasefire violations are primarily done for two factors. One factor is obviously to see to it that people living along LOC or IB remain in a conflicted sort of a situation where they don't monger around or they don't move around that much, because they didn't want them to, Pakistani government or the ceasefire violations are primarily done because they don't want them to move around, because of the fact that once they'll keep settling and normalcy is there, then these terrorists cannot sneak in. And obviously ceasefire violations are also done because under the garb of all the firing, terrorists can sneak into India and create chaos and confusion. So infiltration attempts are increasing, ceasefire violations are increasing, primarily because there are not many, I'll say even OGWs left in Kashmir Valley or in Jammu and Kashmir UT, which are actually supporting negativity within the region. So to spread negativity, to spread more chaos, to spread more confusion, there has been a strong push to put in more militants or more terrorists in Jammu and Kashmir Union Territory.
Scrapping of the temporary special status of Jammu and Kashmir has badly rattled Pakistan, which is desperately trying to infiltrate terrorists through Jammu and Kashmir in order to create unrest in the valley. Recently, Jammu and Kashmir police busted a module of terrorist associates in Pulwama and arrested 4 terrorists linked with Pakistan-based terror group Jaish-e-Mohammed, who were responsible for carrying out blasts at Arihal area of Pulwama in July 2019. Indian security agencies continue to receive inputs about the intention of these terrorist outfits to indulge in terror attacks and breach security in Jammu and Kashmir. Based on these inputs and a past history of cross-border terrorism, all necessary steps are proactively undertaken to flush out terrorists, foiling all the infiltration attempts by Pakistan.
What has happened is that the way Indian security forces, which includes paramilitary, army, intelligence agencies and the state police, Jammu and Kashmir State Police, they have been working, it is commendable. The way they have been building up a coordinated effort, especially after August 5, where they have been neutralizing militants and not just the militants, I would say, even their overground workers have been neutralized, even the channels through which they were receiving money or hawala money was coming, and even the channels through which they were receiving other resources, they have been literally dried down because of the way the intelligence agencies have been coordinating with the security forces. And what we have seen is that because of this, the militancy-related incidents in the whole of Jammu and Kashmir have decreased considerably. And militants where they were actually earlier engaging in conflicts with the security forces, engaging in cross-firing with them, now have stooped to a fact where they have started burning the schools. In Shopi and Pulwama district, we have already come to know that there were attempts being made to burn schools. So now the negativity and the chaos is being created by creating some sort of confusion in the minds of in the young minds or in the minds of the parents who have small kids. So that's the level of militancy or activities or terrorist related activities that is going on.
While the situation in Jammu and Kashmir is returning back to normalcy, Pakistan-sponsored terror outfits are using every trick in the book to incite civil unrest in the region. Such consistent attempts of Pakistan at fomenting trouble and breaching harmony in an otherwise peaceful Kashmir reek of its duplicity. Huge death tolls that would once have made headlines are becoming commonplace in Afghanistan as Taliban and other militant groups continue to dominate and afflict the war-torn nation. A series of recent blasts in Afghanistan explains the miserable law and order situation in the country that is deteriorating by each passing day. Newsweek South Asia has a report.
The situation in war-torn Afghanistan remains volatile as multiple bomb blasts ripped through different parts of the country this week. Recently, 2 separate bomb explosions killed at least 10 civilians, including women and children, and injured 18 others. A roadside bomb this week ripped through a civilian vehicle in southern east province of Khost, killing at least 10 civilians. In a separate blast, 5 traffic police personnel and 13 civilians were wounded in Mazar-e-Sharif city of Balkh province. Earlier this week, in a similar incident, 10 people including 4 women and a child were killed when their vehicle was hit by a roadside bomb in eastern Afghanistan's Ghazni province. Taliban militants have been using improvised explosive devices to make roadside bombs and landmines for targeting security forces, but the lethal weapons also inflict casualties on civilians. Concerned with this unstable state, US Senator Lindsey Graham said that the Taliban cannot be a trusted and reliable counter-terrorism force for America.
We cannot withdraw in a fashion to allow international terrorism to rear its ugly head again in Afghanistan. The Taliban cannot be trusted to be a reliable counterterrorism force. It would be insane for America to rely on the Taliban to ensure that Al-Qaeda and ISIS-K doesn't come back.
Emphasizing the role of Pakistan in Afghanistan's conflict, Lindsey Graham further said that the US President Donald Trump's relationship with Pakistan would really accelerate the chance for peace in Afghanistan. The role of Pakistan in these attacks cannot be ignored as it continues to provide support to Taliban to cause mayhem in the country. It has augmented Afghanistan's stability by providing intelligence, training, weapons and protection to the Afghan Taliban. Thus, Pakistan's pressure on Taliban would be enormously helpful to resolve the 18-year-long war in Afghanistan.
So I see an opening with Prime Minister Khan and General Bajwa that I haven't seen before. And I think the relationship that President Trump has with Pakistan could change behavior in a way that would really accelerate the chance for peace. We all know that if Pakistan applied more pressure on the Taliban, it would be enormously helpful to resolving the conflict here.
The Taliban insurgency remains resilient even 2 decades after US-led forces toppled its regime that led to the United States' longest war. In September, the US and the Taliban had appeared on the verge of signing a deal aimed at reducing America's military footprint in the country. But later, Trump abruptly broke off the diplomatic engagement with the Taliban after a particularly deadly spate of violence broke out in Kabul, in which 12 people were killed, including a US soldier. The talks remained halted for over 2 months until the US president, in a recent surprise visit to Afghanistan, informed about the resumed peace talks between the concerned parties. Later, US Special Envoy Zalmay Khalilzad also arrived in Kabul on December 4th in a bid to breathe new life into efforts to end the war in Afghanistan. But the resumed talks seem to have a short life, since following a suicide attack on a US base outside Kabul, Zalmay Khalilzad announced about a brief pause from talks between the Taliban and the US negotiators.
And with that, we come to the end of this edition of Newsweek South Asia. We will be back next week with more news, views and analysis from the subcontinent. Meanwhile, do keep writing to us at nwsa@ani.com. This is Surbhi Sharma, signing off on the behalf of our entire production team of Newsweek South Asia. Goodbye and take care.
You're watching TAG TV.